We recently shared Woven Violin, and the artist behind Woven Violin is Avery Bright. When I was in Nashville, actually Nolensville, if you are familiar with the greater Nashville area, it's south. After a long morning of sampling, we had to grab some lunch, so I grabbed my camera and asked Avery the "how did you get here" questions. You can watch a tiny snippet of Avery playing, and it's obvious that he's very talented. But my hope is that after you watch this video, you get a better idea of the effort and kind of the not so straight path that led to where he is right now. All right, Avery, how'd you find your way into the music biz? Obviously, you're classically trained.
I'm the middle child of 3 kids. My older brother and younger sister, my mom, started all 3 of us on violin lessons when we were kids. And I was the only one that was amiable enough to just keep, like when it was time to practice, I'd be like, okay, I'll do it. Eventually, got good enough to where I really enjoyed it, and it kind of became my thing. All through high school, I played in a local college orchestra and took lessons from the local, the teacher, the professor at the violin school there. And that prepared me really well for school. And then when it came time for college, it was like, well, I can major in something random or keep playing violin. And I love playing violin. So that's where it started, And I think most people will say, oh, you majored in music. Wow. Like, what are you going to do with that? And for sure, when I graduated undergrad, I was like, man, I wasn't totally sure, but I ended up getting an assistantship at a little graduate school that was close to kind of where I grew up. So spent a year there and did a year of violin performance under my original violin teacher I had when I grew up. It was a great year, and after that moved to Nashville and got married and finished my master's degree at Belmont. And here I am with 2 music degrees, and how do I make a living? And so you do what you have to do. So I taught a lot of violin lessons. I taught a children's orchestra for a while. Started playing wedding gigs. I thought I'd really made it when I started, getting called for wedding gigs. And then eventually started getting called for recording sessions, and that sort of kind of snowballed, and I really fell in love with the studio and recording and creating and eventually writing. And so I ended up as a string arranger a lot of the time, and I had some chops as an engineer, and so learned how to record myself and write my own string charts, and learned how to play the viola in graduate school, and so could kind of swing from with 2 of those instruments of the 3 at the string quartet, and ended up playing on a lot of records and doing a lot of recording there, and then eventually getting into the film and TV and licensing space and kind of honing my writing chops, and that's where we are now. And then eventually finally made it to the holy grail of working with John Mayer.
That's right.
So here we are. Life is good.
What was the catalyst for you to start your own studio setup?
I think it was the desire to have as much control as I could over my work. When you live the gig life, you just kind of wait on the phone to ring, and just you kind of live gig by gig, and you're always trying to sort of piece it together. And it's always, you can only be in one place at one time, which is still the case, but I learned I could stack jobs that way. If someone called me for a session and I was already in a session, at another studio, I couldn't do 2 sessions at one time, versus if I had my own studio, they said, hey, we want to get you on this track. I said, well, I can't do it today, but I could do it tomorrow. So now I could suddenly book 2 gigs instead of 1. And I could stack them up that way. And then eventually, over time, your weeks start to fill up. And then it was a week waiting period, then a month. Eventually I got so busy I had to start farming stuff out. And but it was essentially the desire to control as much as I could my workflow.
You have transitioned from working for other people, but you started writing your own music, producing your own albums, and now that's really taken off. What was that like? Moving from one to the other?
It was actually kind of difficult, to be totally honest, just in that it's a very different form of income and a different pricing structure, and you have to take a lot more ownership and responsibility for what you do on a day-to-day basis. So when when you're just playing sessions and gigs, you show up and you do the job, and most of the time they've got the stuff there for you to play, so you just sit down, play the violin, and leave, and you get paid, which is a good life. But eventually you hit a ceiling if you do enough work where you can only play so many sessions in a day, and the rates are what they are, and so you can kind of see the income ceiling and the opportunity ceiling. But with the writing and the producing, you set your own rates. So if there's a standard session rate in Nashville, everybody gets paid that. But with your own rates, you say, well, this is what I think I'm worth, and that's a lot more difficult than just showing up and saying, oh, you'll pay me this, okay, or not okay. So,
what was the first of your personal projects that took off, or had a level of success where you thought, okay, maybe this is what I really want to focus on doing?
Yeah, I have a couple of artist monikers I create music under. One of them is called Allen and Bright, and it's me and my friend Lance Allen, who's an amazing fingerstyle guitar player. And I worked on his record, one of his solo records, when he was making it. He hired me to play on it, and after that we kind of hit it off, became friends, and I really loved his music, and so we started collaborating. He invited me to plan a couple more tracks and was like, hey, why don't we just do this as a collaboration? Instead of me paying you, we can release it, together. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, let's do it. And so that was really amazing to see that start to work. And then I also had I still have a collaboration with a friend of mine named Matt Nelson, who is a cellist, and he and I were session buddies from years back. And we started writing sort of neoclassical chamber string, funky, quirky string pieces. And those got into a licensing house and started to generate some income. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. He got super busy with some other stuff. And so Lance and I kept making our stuff, and Matt and I would work together a little bit. And then I eventually started making stuff under my own name, which is Avery Bright, or Roar, which is Ruda is actually how you say the word, but R with an O, or R-O with a slash, then R-E. And that moniker are sort of big, sort of more orchestral tunes. And that's where my heart really is. I love that stuff.
Collaboration, did it come easy to you, or was it a challenge to... Because you have to give some things up, but it's also inspiring. I mean, what was your process like figuring that out?
Yeah, I think that I had a lot of maturing to do when I first started collaborating with people. And I think I still do, honestly. But luckily, my collaborators are also my friends. And so they were very patient and gracious. But it was difficult, when you're used to working on your own a lot, or just playing what's on the page. It's hard to sit down and sometimes meet people where they're at. I tend to be very perfectionistic and have an opinion on what I want, and so it still is a growing a growing process in writing and creating with people. But it's amazing because I create stuff on my own, and I know exactly what it's going to sound like. Generally, when I sit down, I'm like, I know exactly what this is going to be. But when you walk into a room with somebody, you don't know, and there's always going to be ideas that come from the other party, or however many there are, that you would never think of on your own. And so at the end of the day, you make something that you could never have made on your own, which is the beauty of it.
Go check out Woven Violin. Talk soon.